Great. Don't know if I was supposed to say hello, everybody, but there you go.
No, we're good. All right, James, welcome to the podcast. I appreciate you spending the time. Now, we were introduced through Mike Marino, right? My good friend. I've been friends with Mike for 20, 30 years, something like that. A long time.
Absolutely.
You coach him, right?
Yes, we've been coaching for, oh my goodness, probably 7, 8 years by now.
A
Quite
while
a
ago.
while.
Okay. So good. So Mike connected us. I want to talk to you today about all the business coaching you do, because I know you've been involved in Tony Robbins and you've been trained in NLP and all that really interesting, great stuff that we can talk about. And, what you use in your practice now, what you don't. You also said you're kind of transitioning your practice, which we can talk about later in the show, which I think is it's a good time to kind of bring that stuff out and talk about it. But why don't you go a little bit into your background, where you grew up, how you got started. I know you're down in Raleigh, right? In the Raleigh-Durham area?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
Great
So
place to
we
be
got
for
some
that.
very good friends. One works at Duke Medical. One of my wife's best friends lives in that area. So we get down there sometimes.
Great.
So
So basically, a little bit of my background, real quick,
yeah,
is
good.
kind of the Reader's Digest condensed version here. Is grew up in Iowa, and struggled, got through college, was pretty much overweight, so I started running here and there to drop some weight and do that, and
Okay.
was really just trying to kind of find myself, figure myself out. I got the extended 5-year college program version going there,
Right.
and just trying to succeed, trying to move ahead with my life, figure myself out. So to get out of Iowa, I joined joined the military. I was a U.S. Army infantry out in the Old Guard in Virginia. So did
Okay.
that for about 3 years, and almost got married, and that didn't work out. So I was still struggling to find myself. So I
Yeah.
did the
Don't
old,
we all at that point?
yeah. I did the proverbial pack everything in the car and move cross country to Colorado. I had a relative out there. I just wanted to be by the mountains. So
Okay.
did some work out there. I got a job with the federal government as a U.S. Marshal. That was during
Oh,
the,
okay.
yeah, it was pretty cool. I did some work there during the Oklahoma City bombing trials and
Wow.
did all that. And at that point, from an external perspective, totally succeeded. I mean, came this young kid from Iowa all the
Yeah.
way up, conquered my weight, conquered success, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the
You're a
bottom line
U.S.
is,
Marshal. I mean, that's pretty prestigious, right?
yeah. I'd marched at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. I wasn't a Tomb Guard, but I'd done some great things, and the bottom line is, I just wasn't happy.
Yeah.
I was still stuck inside with, external fool anybody, but inside I wasn't there. So
Right.
I had a relative went to a Tony Robbins event, and he came back all pumped up and
Right.
excited.
Like you
So,
always do, right?
oh yeah, I always come back from those excited.
Yeah.
So I went and then signed up for some more seminars, and then I was on this emotional high. I'd never up to that point, I always thought my emotions controlled me instead of me controlling them. So
Right.
it was a big learning, a big flip for me. So I took a wild, big emotional leap, resigned from the Marshal Service, moved to California, and met my wife, and we just started fresh. So I
Wow.
ended up working with his company, just doing straight up coaching, 40, 50 hours a week on the phone. At one point in time, I think I had like 110 clients. It was crazy as they were trying to figure
All
out the
through Tony
model.
Robbins' organization?
Yeah. Literally, I just get a file, say, hey, here's Joe, and Joe wants to achieve this, this, and this. Help him figure it out.
That was it? Well, plus you had training, of course, but
Oh
yeah.
yeah. But in true Tony fashion, they don't
Trial by fire.
immersion.
Yeah, right. Immersion therapy. Yeah, so you didn't even just make a paradigm shift. You basically made a whole life career shift. I mean, you changed your career, you moved your location, which was good, I guess, because you met your wife, and you just dove
Yeah.
right into this stuff, right? Tony Robbins stuff is intoxicating. I mean, when, especially if you're looking for yourself, it's like an epiphany of all these things that you find. And I remember when the first time I started listening to his stuff, yeah, changes your life. So, but you really changed your life. You're like,
Oh
I'm going to
yeah.
go with this guy, which is probably smart. A lot more people should do it.
Yeah. So anyway, so I ended
And
up
how old were
staying.
you at this point, James?
Oh goodness, I 30. So
Okay, but you weren't married at that point, right? So you had no kids. You had nothing tying you down. You could go and just make that change, right? So
yep.
it wasn't that big of a risk. It wasn't like you're pulling your kids out of school and all that kind of stuff. So
No, but the biggest risk was actually really pulling away from comfort, right? I mean,
yeah,
everybody was saying, "Why are you doing this? You got a great
that's
job.
what everyone does, right?
You're already like 7, 8 years in. You bought back your military time. You could retire in 12, 13 years, have a pension. I just kept thinking, you know what, I'm going to be 45, still waking up every day going, "Oh, what do I want to do with my life?"
Right.
I was going to have to put that on hold for 12 years for a paycheck and a little bit of security, and still wake up with the same problem 12 years later.
Right.
It was hard to reconcile.
And you know
So
what? People mean well, but they're like more afraid of the risks you want to take than you are. You know what I mean? Like they
yeah.
don't want you to fail, and they also don't want you to succeed. It's like you'll leave them behind, or you'll fail, and they'll have to deal with it. So that's people mean well, but I think they sabotage indirectly.
Yeah, very much so. And so I moved out there, and probably, even though I immersed myself in the coaching for the next 10 years with this company before I
Right.
left to build my own, I think I probably tried to get out of coaching as much as I loved it. I think probably 6, 7, 8 times I kept saying, but where's this taking me? It's so hard. It's such a struggle. I just can't do what I want to do. And I
Right.
moved to Arizona to try to make things a little bit better.
Now,
And
why did you think it was such a struggle? I mean, you were Tony's organization, right? So there's a lot of leads coming in and people. Why was it a struggle? Because there wasn't a lot of money and that kind of stuff, or
yeah, it was a real paradigm shift, because I loved what I was doing, helping other people create change, which was helping me create change inside my mind.
right,
That was very fulfilling. But the it was the exact opposite of the Marshal Service, right? Where I had the financial security in that, but not the job fulfillment. Here I had
right,
all the job fulfillment, but I
yeah,
really didn't have any of the
financial,
financial
yeah,
certainty and all of that
uh,
within my control or influence.
right. And unfortunately, fulfillment only gets you so far when you're struggling
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah. So,
You
and,
know,
and I'm still an employee, right? So I can't
right?
really do a lot other than be a great coach as best I can, but I was
Yeah, you had
still
to
relying
work
on
within
them to feed me.
his world, right? I mean, you were an employee, so got to follow the
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And eventually that was capped. And, they were also trying to figure out how their business model was and how to make this be profitable for them. So there was constant change and just a lot of uncertainty.
right.
So anyway, that all kind of came to a head after about 10 years. We had moved, my wife and son at that point, we had moved to Arizona. And so I started my own business, Evolution for Success, and been doing
So you're
that
right,
now.
like in your early 40s, right around 40, right?
Correct. Yeah. Cause I've
Yeah.
been, see, I left the company in 2010. So this has been
Okay,
10 years, 10
there you
years.
go. Okay, and that was in Arizona at that point, you said?
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. Actually, I started the coaching in 99. Let me add it up in my head here. I started the coaching in 99, stayed with the company until 2010.
Okay.
And then we had moved. I was in California for 8 of those years. And then 2 years of that, we moved out here to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I am now. So we've been here about 12 years. So I was in North Carolina when I opened the business kind of
Got
more
it.
full
Evolution.
time.
Got it. Okay.
That transition.
What brought you to Raleigh?
Actually, just the crash, right? That's was part of the great thing about Robbins is you're kind of on the cutting edge of psychology and trends, and everything is a pattern of thinking and a pattern of thought and a pattern of human behavior, and there's a pattern in everything. And so we had kind of seen some of that coming. So our house went through the roof, and some of that in
Right.
Arizona, and so we decided to make a transition at the time.
Just
So.
thought it was a better life for your kids and stuff in Raleigh, or
Oh yeah, because my son was 15 or something at the time, and so we're like, oh, great colleges,
yeah,
great to be out here for all that, and Raleigh was it been like in the top place to live for like 10 or 12 years at
yeah.
that
It's
point.
still one of the top
so,
five, I think. Yeah.
so yeah, we figured to be able to weather economic uncertainty and all those things. It was a pretty
Right.
stable environment to put
Yeah, and it's
ourselves
not 125 degrees in the summertime. My
in.
sister
Exactly.
went to ASU in Scottsdale. I was just telling somebody yesterday. I think I did a podcast with a guy who's in Arizona. He's an inventor. I mean, it's hot. We were out there for her graduation in May. This was in the middle of the summer, and it was so hot. You had to be in a pool up to your chest in water just to be outside. I mean, it was ridiculous, especially if you're not, accustomed to the climate. I mean, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So Raleigh, yeah, much better climate.
Yeah, everybody says it's a dry heat, and I'm like, when you can't walk outside without shoes, it doesn't matter what kind of heat
Yeah.
it is, you
I
know?
told them dry heats and pizza ovens too. Nobody's climbing into them,
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So more temperate climate, definitely. And Raleigh's definitely a happening place. Yeah.
It is.
That's
Yeah.
where the tech quadrangle is, they say, right? Where all these tech companies are and
Yeah.
innovation and stuff that's going on down there.
Yeah, and it has its own triangle, between Chapel Hill, and then there's UNC, and then there's Duke, and then there's NC State, and there's the whole, like I said, Research Triangle Park in between all those colleges and institutions there, and so there's a lot of good business structure here, a lot of educational structure,
Yeah.
and a lot of good things
My
going for
son wanted desperately to go to Duke, but we don't. Hackers were smart. We're not that smart, so.
it.
But
Yeah,
he's at Indiana. He's an informatics major. He's very happy, but he would have
nice.
loved to have gone to Duke.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We moved out here to go to state schools, and a little squirrel tangent here. And my son ended up going to Virginia.
That's
So,
funny.
what do you
Which is
do?
hard to get into out of state. So UNC Chapel Hill out of state's impossible to get into. I mean, it's like they said they take like 15% out of state, and you got to believe at least half of those are athletes, right?
Yes.
So it's ridiculous. It doesn't matter what you're great. You're probably easier to get into Duke out of state than it is to get into Chapel Hill because they get so much funding from North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard,
But
especially
so
from our
that's
county.
Charlottesville, right? University of Virginia.
No, that's up in Richmond, the
Oh, okay.
Spiders, University of Richmond. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Very good. Yeah, it's another hard. So they're all hard to get into, especially if you're not in the state.
Yep.
So, okay. So now you're out there. It's early 40s, right? Mid 40s. You're in North Carolina and you started the coaching business. So, okay. So let's talk about the evolution of that. Since it's called Evolution for Success, um, it's kind of hard to do to say I'm going to start my own coaching practice, right? I mean, I guess you had tools, but did you have like restrictions on, because you learned stuff from Tony, right? So you learned a lot of his stuff, but you must have had like agreements where you're not allowed to go out and start your own coaching practice and use all of his. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I know you'd sign non-compete agreements, non-disclosure agreements, and things like that. Were you able to take some of those tools with you?
Oh, absolutely. Because the way that the way that everything works, and the way that I had to kind of grow personally is, Tony Robbins. First of all, he's a master at assimilating information
Right.
and giving it to you in like just like a raw dosage of, hey, here's what it is, right?
Right.
And most of all the information that he's assimilated, he just got from someone else. His mentors were guys like Jim Rohn and Earl Nightingale, people who'd
Right.
been in the business since the start, right? The secret of I can't think of it now. Secret of Getting Rich, right? Or no, Think and Grow Rich. Excuse
Right.
me, right?
Was it Napoleon
Napoleon
Hill?
Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I started with the Tony psychology and all of his tapes, but as I kept getting more and more clients, I mean, I think I've logged over, quick counting, after about 45,000 sessions, right, in the last 20 years. I've had to expand into everything from parenting models to financial models to psychology models to anything and everything that my clients would need. I took that initial, beauty of immersion, and like I always laugh and tell the story about my I had some clients with ADD, right? So I'd go to the library way back then, right? They didn't have as much stuff on Google. And I pulled out all like a dozen and a half books on ADD, and I got them all spread out on the table in the library, and I'm reading through all the table of contents and everything, trying to figure out ADD, right? So I always thought that was pretty funny.
Right. Well, you got to do what you want to do to help your clients, right?
Yeah. So originally, originally that gave me a lot of structure in the self-help world and psychology, but I just expanded outside of that. And a lot of these guys are all saying the same thing. I love Zig Ziglar. I love
Yeah, they're
Napoleon
all great.
Hill. I love
Brian
John
Tracy.
Maxwell,
Yeah.
Brian Tracy, Dennis Waitley, Tony, and a lot of them all roads lead to Rome, and that they all have a basic message is, if you want something different in life, you got to change yourself first.
Yeah.
It means you got to take responsibility for your life. And so when everybody has a different expression of that, a different way of doing it, a different approach to it, but all that leads back to one thing. So after a while, then I got away from, oh, Tony says this and Tony says that, and it's really, hey, this is really kind of a truth.
The
You get those
truisms, right?
truth,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of where that was. And then I took some advanced trainings in actually what Tony uses on stage to move and motivate and persuade people, which is the science of neuro-linguistic
Right.
programming,
NLP. Yeah.
NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy. I'm not a therapist, licensed therapist, right? But that's what the guy trademarked it as. which is deals with what they say coaching isn't, which is deeper emotional work within the unconscious mind, because that's where real change happens, right? You
Okay.
can do a lot of all the self-help coaching methodologies, and that is change, and it's good change. But if you really want to have the deepest, most fulfilling long-term change, so you stop kind of the up-down pattern, have it, lose it, have it, lose it, have it, lose it. You really got to dig into the unconscious mind to do emotional release work back there, and that kind of stretches into the realm of what coaching is and isn't. But if you keep
Right.
going down that rabbit hole far enough, that's where you end up going to. So I had taken all those trainings and done some of those things, which really opened up the doors to really being able to help people in a more complete way.
So that's what attracted you to NLP training, was the unconscious level of it. I mean,
Oh,
really.
absolutely. Because I'd get it's really simple. You get perhaps someone who's maybe has a few more pounds than they want, right?
Hmm.
Coaching is just, okay, where are you now? Where do you want to be? Okay, you're at 240, you want to be at 200, great. What are the obstacles? Okay, you're eating too many Cheetos, whatever that is.
Right.
And you understand the obstacles, and then if you just give them a tool, which is, hey, well, let's get on Apple and let's build a good playlist and enjoy walking around the block to one song and anchor in some good feelings to that, and then we'll add in a second song and a third song. That kind of change is good change, but it's predicated on willpower,
Right.
and it's only predicated on where are you now and where do you want to go. And that takes a long time to create change that way, that's long term, because as soon as you're under stress or
Your
something else
habits
like
go
that,
back, right? Yeah.
all this old stuff from the past is just going to trigger and override those changes for a
Right.
while. And that
Right.
creates the seesaw. So it's a lot easier if you just go back and clear up the stuff from the past, so that then you have a clear journal to write in, right? You're not writing over the old story all the time, trying to create something new.
Right. So
So
maybe for people listening, because a lot of people know who Tony Robbins is and kind of what he does. But maybe you can go a little bit into what NLP is, and so people can understand a little bit, who are listening, and what it is. You were describing it a little bit, but I think
sure.
that'd be valuable for people to understand it.
So in the simplest terminology, what NLP is it's understanding. Traditional psychiatry tends to ask why is something what it is. So let's say you had a phobia of a snake, right? We say
Okay.
like, okay, oh well, why do you have that fear, that phobia of a snake, right? Well, I see it and whatever, but we ask, how do you have that experience with the snake? So
You mean like
once
what are you going through when you're having that experience? Like how is it happening to you?
Correct. Like
Okay.
how are you creating that experience between your visual, your auditory, your kinesthetic, right? In what's going on inside your body, but by what you see, what you think, what you feel.
Right.
And that's a pattern. And every time you see the snake, then you run that pattern. It's just like a
Yeah, your
record.
mind automatically, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
happening to, like whatever the snake you think's going to do, it's happening to you right there.
Exactly. It's just like
Yeah.
every time you go to the vending machine and you throw in your quarters and you put A16, you get the Twinkies, right?
Right.
It's
You're
like
like, it's coming out.
it's a program
Right.
thing. So if you change going to the vending machine and you put in a nickel and a dime instead of a quarter, and you do the numbers backwards, you can't get the same result,
Right.
right? So so in a simple way, you're doing that with the brain
Right.
to help them really create the changes. So it just wipes it out.
Right.
It erases it.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Reprogram what your prior experiences were.
That's a great way to state it. It's a true reprogramming of the core unconscious experience, that where you built that little sequence of events that creates that emotional reaction.
Right. So
Don't
if
ask
you're
me to say
afraid
that
to go
twice.
to, what's a good example? If you're afraid to go to the dentist, right, because you had some terrible experience when you're a child, which you may not even remember, but you have these significant physical responses when you're going there, you're reprogramming them so they don't, so they can get away from that and realize that it's not real, and then their body won't do that anymore, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And there's a lot,
Absolutely.
I guess, that if you think about it, there's a lot of examples of that in life. Things that we react to sometimes don't even know why, but we get physically ill or we break out in hives or whatever. We have physical responses to things. That always amazes me, that we have physical responses to things that aren't happening to us. Like I did. And when I was in college, was it college or law school? I think it was in college. I was going to law school, and I had to do a paper for the professor, whatever the law. It was an undergraduate law course, and I had to write a paper. So, oh no, it wasn't undergrad. It was an abnormal psych class. Okay, so I chose because I was going to law school. I chose to study um, multiple personality in the law. So when people commit crimes under the influence of a different personality,
Right.
are they responsible for that crime or not? So I chose it because I thought it was interesting, right? I also chose it because I figured it's probably the most unknown topic to the professors. I figured the least the professor could know about it, the more chance I had of getting a good grade, which, by the way, A plus. He'd never read
Perfect.
this stuff before. But it fascinated me as I started to get into this topic, and I was reading Sybil, and I was reading I watched the movie, and I was reading these books and these stories about these people where they develop these personalities, obviously from trauma in their life, right? And have physical characteristics that didn't exist in their life, in their body. Like there were people that needed to wear glasses and develop personalities that had 20/20 vision. That flies in the face of science. Like because your body's causing your eyes to change for this new personality. Or you could play the piano and you never had a piano lesson in your life. I mean, there's all kinds of weird stories that I would read about these people that would develop. So it just shows you that your mind is this. I mean, it's basically a computer. It's just extremely complex, in terms of programming. So I think that's why NLP always never really got into it, but it always fascinated me, the
Yeah.
concept.
The easiest way to express it is like this. So let's just say there's a 2-year-old baby, right? So like if you
Okay.
could just pretend you're a little 2-year-old baby or something, right? Mom plops you on a chair, right? A
Right.
tiny little chair at a little desk or something, little table, right? Now the child can't speak, is just literally an unconscious mind, right? You can't hypnotize a child under 7 because they have no filters, right?
Right. Because
They
it's
have
too
no
unconscious.
they have no conscious ability to choose this or choose that with logic and reason,
Makes
right?
sense. Okay.
So, you've heard the term and the expression, right? Like a child has 95% of its personality and behavioral traits developed by the time they're 7, right? The reason for that is because in that 0 to 7, they have no filters. So coming back to the child, right? Just imagine the
Right.
child sitting on the chair, loses his balance, falls off, bangs his head on or her head on the floor. So there's an instant kinesthetic response of pain, right? That's
Right.
unexplainable while they're looking at the chair, right? So now they start to link up chair equals pain. And mom says, oh, don't fall off the chair, right? And hurt yourself. So that's a one time experience. So they can't necessarily understand the language, but as they start to develop language, let's say they fall off the chair again. Now it's anchored in their mind unconsciously,
Right.
pain,
Yeah.
chair,
And carry
right?
themselves a
They're
certain way.
visually
Right.
looking at the chair, right?
Right.
And mom says, "Oh, you fell off the chair again. That hurts." Right. So fast forward that happening 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Now all of a sudden that becomes what they call a gestalt in therapy, which is a collective group of emotions that all
Mm-hmm.
fire off for the same thing. And I know that's maybe a simple example, but if you carried that, remember the brain learns by creating an association to something that's already stored. So it takes a new experience and it says, oh, this is like that.
Right.
And in a split second, it creates that association.
Right.
And so fast forward through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as the child falls off the swing and they tip off the lawn chair and they get shoved off in the little game where they go around and around and around and there's only
Right.
4 chairs and
That
5 people and I forget the game and
musical chairs.
yeah, thank you, musical chairs, right? And
Yeah.
then fast forward that to when they're 30 years old and they can't sit down.
Yeah, because they have all kinds of neurological issues, right? They're just like
Right.
psychological issues.
Yeah, and they forget why
Yeah.
because as the conscious mind builds at 7 now, they start to reason and rationalize what something is, but all that core first experience is trapped in the unconscious mind, and that's why I said, a full coaching model, a full coaching practice, I think should really include working with the unconscious mind to release those negative things from the past so that we can do a strategy way out here in the future then, which is, hey, let's get you accustomed to just sitting down again and being comfortable.
Right. Right. But there's some people that are so extreme, they have they have, what's the word? Compulsive, obsessive compulsive disorder, that they need like serious psychological therapy. It's not just
Right.
coaching. I mean, they had some bad. I met a guy once, I had to do legal work for him. I mean, this guy was so bad that I had talked to several of his doctors who they couldn't help him anymore. I mean, he was so disruptive to their practice and the other patients. He used to call me, leave messages. I wouldn't even know what he was talking about for 6, 7 minutes, which is a long time, by the way, on an answering machine. It's like a lifetime. He would just ramble on about things. He couldn't change his shirt. He had to walk in and out of our doorway 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And he was an adult. This wasn't a kid,
Yeah,
but he had had experiences in his lifetime that I thought he also was born with certain problems. But I bet you a lot of it is experiences probably prior to age 7, right? That start that path that gets
exactly.
worse and worse and worse and
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, it's all trapped in the unconscious mind. And all those little rituals and those little things are actually there to try to create the comfort and the certainty to release the anxiety.
Right.
And it ends up becoming a loop and it creates it at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I
they
guess
have to
that's
get
why
more and
people go
more
back to
complex.
eating, right? When they have stress, because that's a comfortable place for them.
Yeah.
They find
And,
comfort in food.
yeah. And that becomes something that they can't consciously think themselves out of with a session, right? You really need somebody, whether it's a therapist or someone in NLP or something like has those certifications and the experience to really help people work and deal with the unconscious mind.
Yeah. Yeah. 30 days diets are not going to do it for people that, are
Exactly.
so heavy they just can't change anything that they're doing. It's difficult because I think when you have friends and they're struggling with certain things, whether it's in business or personal or their weight or whatever, and I'm not in your industry, so it's very frustrating sometimes and difficult to deal with friends when you feel like you want to get through to them and you don't know how, and you've sent them to people and they've gone to other people and they've gone through therapy and this or that, and it just it's just not clicking for them, and I don't know what it is. I'm sure you've worked with people that you just can't get through to everybody, right? So I don't know what it is, other things in their life that are standing in the way of them doing the
Yeah.
work with you or whatever.
Well, they always say that the first step to change is just having an awareness, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have an awareness of the patterns of your life, then you're in a place where you're naive, and
Yeah.
naive is not a bad thing. It's
Right.
just you're like, I don't know what I don't know about being an astrophysicist,
Right.
right? I'm just totally naive about that. So our
Right.
patterns are the same way, right? So until we have a moment of pain or pleasure, I'll throw a Robinism right there, pleasure
Yeah.
and pain, right?
Right.
Until we have that experience where we become conscious of where we're incompetent,
Yeah.
that awareness is the first step, but then we have to choose to do something with it after that as well.
Yeah.
So awareness is really that first key.
Yeah.
uh,
It's funny. I've interviewed all kinds of different, I wouldn't say therapists, but, social workers. I mean, people that do all kinds of coaching, right? Some on the podcast, some on the not. But I think that is, if you write a book, if you wrote a paper on the one thing that people need to change their life, it's a self-awareness and consciousness of what they're doing, whether it's being nasty to people at work and having trouble supervising them because of the way you treat people, or the things that you're attached to when it comes to overeating or shyness. I spoke to a woman in Singapore who's a voice coach. I spoke to I listen to Brene Brown. I mean, it's all the same, right? I talked to a woman in Cleveland. She's a habit scientist. She's a neuroscientist. She studied habits, how to change those habits, how to people get ingrained in habits, very similar to, all the NLP stuff. And it all comes down to just what you said. It is making you aware is 90% of solving the problem, because most people do things in life. They're completely unaware of what they're doing, how they're offending people, how they're carrying themselves, why they're letting it happen to them. They don't realize, like, I mean, I have relatives that can do this, right? They can go through something that happened to them 10 or 15 years ago, and you get so worked up like it's actually happening again right there. And it's not even close
yeah.
to happening. And I guess that's human nature. But the funny thing is that the word self-conscious is totally the opposite of that. If you're self-conscious, you're uncomfortable about whatever it is you're doing. You're on stage, you're self-conscious, you're giving a eulogy, you're whatever it is. But you really need self-consciousness is self-awareness. It's the same thing, but it's funny
Yeah.
how that's come about.
Yeah. Well, one of the beauties of NLP is it's based on some simple foundational psychology. One of those is, of course, cause and effect, right?
Okay. Hmm.
But the other one to help on this aspect of awareness
Yeah.
is if I could teach people one thing to like begin to become aware, is just to understand that your perception is your projection.
Yeah.
So I always, if you can wrap your mind around this metaphor, it's like if you can imagine yourself when you're observing other people, and like on those cop shows, have the two-way mirror. If you just imagine like a two-way mirror wrapped all the way around you,
Right.
everybody else's perception when they're pointing a finger at you really is your opportunity to understand them and where they really are,
Right.
right? So if someone just looks at you really simple and they say, hey, you're being so judgy,
Yeah.
right? Or you're being so selfish, there's what that really is there's just an aspect of themselves that they're trying to project on you through looking at your behavior. And that's their opportunity for growth.
Right.
And if you look at that and you say you have an emotional response to that, guess what? That's your opportunity, right? How you're labeling them, whether you have no patience or whether they make you angry or whatever that is, that's your opportunity to have that reflection towards you and say, what about them is making me mad? And then you say, that's what I need to own and what I can release for my personal growth.
Right. Because it's all relative subjectiveness, right? I
Exactly.
perceive things differently than you do.
Yeah.
Just because we're
Yeah.
looking at the same thing doesn't mean we're going to see it the same way. It's because our eyes work differently, our brains work differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating, and I think that it's the kind of thing where if you realize that you perceive things certain ways, that you can change that perception, right? I mean, you if you're conscious about it, can't you decide how you perceive things? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
And the space to do that is this. Don't do this if you're listening to the podcast driving, right? That's my disclaimer. But
right.
everything out here around you, if you really want to change this, I tell my clients, you just got to close your eyes and say, close your eyes. Great. Let's start here.
Yeah, and
Right.
imagine it differently, right?
Yeah. Or just notice for actually, in my opinion, what needs to come first is noticing what's not how you want it to be there, right?
Okay.
What's the thought, the feeling, the whatever you're saying to yourself, the picture, right? Kind of going back to the NLP, right? The visual, auditory, kinesthetic representation. We need to release that and create a shifting change there to let that go.
Yeah.
So that then we can be open to experiencing it the way we want it to be with those positive feelings. So we don't keep dragging that negative stuff forward.
Yeah, I
Right.
think that's the difference between people I know that take things in stride. It's because they let things go.
Yeah.
Be- they let it go. They move on to the next thing, whatever. It's not, you can't control everything, but you can well, you can control your own things. You can't control the world outside of you. I think that's
Correct.
like the biggest, yeah. So I think it's fascinating because you're the first, coach that I've met who is more holistic than, because I go to a lot of networking events, and there's probably going to upset a lot of people that I speak with, but they all have a different aspect of the way they coach and what they do and who they work with when they help you in this profession and that profession. They coach you with marketing, they coach you with business development. You seem to be much more holistic than, which is where when Mike told me about what you do and what you do for him, I said, well, I got to meet, Jim, and we're going to talk about what he does. But
Yeah.
is that a proper perception of what you're doing, what you do for people?
Absolutely, because like I'll just take this in the healing world,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah. Okay. Good
let's say
example.
let's say Tony Robbins,
Hmm.
right? Now this is a very high; these are very high level generalizations. So
Okay.
please understand, I'm not going into specifics,
Right.
okay? But high generalizations in terms of high level patterns, right?
Hmm.
Tony's whole big motivational thing. Guess what he needs? Motivation in his life. So that's where he's moved into that. We have the mind, the body, and the spirit. So if there's a modality over here that's like emotional freedom techniques where you do all the tapping on your meridians, guess what? The
Right. I've seen
people
that.
who
Yeah.
are defining themselves in that healing modality, that's actually what they need for their personal advancement during these years or whatever that is, right? Then you got people over here like me who did the NLP stuff, which is all the mental, emotional clearing work. right? And then you might have someone over here who's doing the Huna work, and they get into Huna, which is like the Hawaiian spiritual aspect. So that's on the spiritual piece then,
Oh, that's
right?
interesting.
And then you'll have this person over here who's like working with the mind, or excuse me, the body, and they're working on, aligning all their chakras and using the
Hmm.
music, the solfeggio scale, right, with each one of your chakras to vibrate at different resonances, to do emotional healing work there. That's because that's what they need, right? That's
Right.
their expression of themselves. Their perception of the world is their projection, and that's what they need to master, because that's their weakness, right, for this life, or the aspect of this portion of their life, right? What the only thing I've done is I've had such an immersion in this field for 20 years. um, I liken it like this. Originally, I was just like a piece of paper, and oh my goodness, I found Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins, or I'm sorry, I wasn't a piece of paper. I was a little circle, right?
Right.
And Tony Robbins was this big triangle, and so I was a little circle inside the triangle of Tony Robbins.
Right.
Great. And then I had to grow outside of that.
You
So my
grew out
circle
right.
grew as I grew. Now Tony Robbins, triangle was inside of me.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's, all the Nightingale Conant series and Zig Ziglar and all those people. That's a big rectangle.
Yeah.
So now this rectangle was, encompassing me as the circle with the Tony Robbins triangle inside. I had to outgrow that. So now I have an even bigger circle with, the rectangle and the triangle and all these modalities that I've invested myself in and invested myself and immersed myself in over the years. Originally, they give me some form and some context to understand them, but originally, I have to keep growing outside of that and growing
Right.
outside of that and pulling all this together. And eventually, that's what they call mastery of a skill or a tool, right? You bring all this stuff in. You don't let one healing modality define you forever, I believe,
Right.
right? But you bring it in, you use it for what you need it for, and then you bring another one in and learn something new, and another one and another one, another one, and eventually you create, your expression of healing, which is what you need. So like my program, which is called Achieve Anything Now,
Hmm.
it's all about, okay, you go to the Tony Robbins event, the big thing, and then you do the coaching, right? And then I came home and I'm still sitting here after 14 years going, okay, I'm making
Right.
$35,000 in the first 6 months of the year. I can help everybody else, but I can't help myself.
Yeah.
So I built this program, this expression of me, of what I needed, so that I could clear up all my stuff moment to moment, 10 minutes at a time, diving in my chair in between coaching calls, and totally changed my life, because I built a paradigm and a model for clearing for that level.
Yeah.
Right. So that's just my expression. I throw it out there. Great.
Right.
And so everybody's just doing their own thing, doing the best they can with the immersing themselves in the modalities that they need for their own healing. And that resonates with other people who need that. And that's how you attract clients to you.
Right. But there's always room for growth. I think that's what you
Always,
recognize. Not
always.
that's not true for every. I mean, it's true for everybody, but they don't think that it's true.
Right. And there's a great saying that just says, not all wisdom lies in one school of thought.
Yeah.
So your growth stagnates when you let one model give you and your life structure, because no matter how much you can be, you're still more than that. Right.
Always. Or you stop. You become complacent. You get a job, and then, like you said, 20, 30 years from now, what did I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm always looking it's funny, whenever I'm at an event or I'm with somebody and they recommend a book, let's say, I go, I actually write it down and I actually read the book or listen to the book or whatever it happens to be. And then I look into the author if I like the book, if I know what else. And then I was at an event once. I forget what the name of the book. Have you ever heard of the Go Giver series?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
So
that.
I was at it was a luncheon thing. Somebody mentions this book. So I write everything down. So I go, I listen to the book. So 2-3 weeks later, read this thing and I think, what are you thankful for? Whatever we were doing at the time. And I said, well, I want to thank Jim for recommending that book, The Go Giver. And it's a great book. You should all read it. So Jim looks at me. I'm using your name as an example.
Sure.
I don't remember what his name was. And he says, what did I recommend to you? I go, The Go Giver. He says, like, he didn't remember even saying it. And I thought it was funny, and nobody else in the room got it. Like, so people are sometimes they're oblivious to things. They wander through life. I just think that you've got to, if you don't grow, what do they say? You die. I mean, that's the end of life, is when you stop doing all those things. You don't have problems anymore. You don't have troubles anymore. You don't have stresses that you have to deal with and obstacles you have to and opportunities for growth, because you're dead. It's the end of the journey. You
Yeah.
know, I hate to put it that way, but I think that, the ashes and dust, that's all we are at the end. So what's the point, But some people just don't get that. They just keep going to work. Now, I think this whole Corona thing has really allowed a lot of people to reevaluate, you know, a lot of people who wouldn't normally do it and wouldn't seek you out or wouldn't get introduced to you or wouldn't do the coaching, because you still only reach, 20% of the people. And of those 20%, only a certain percentage of it really get it, because it's just nature of human life. But I think a lot of people are really affected by this whole, you're at home, you're with your family, you got to reevaluate what you're doing. Do you like it? There's been a big shift in family life and life work balance stuff, I think. I mean, I don't know how you feel about it.
Absolutely. In all human growth, right? We have these things called values, and values
Yeah.
are just words like love, success, joy, right? My
Right. Of
business
course.
name,
Yeah.
evolution, success,
Yeah.
right? That trigger or light up, kind of like pain and share, right? They trigger these emotions that we have. And so we naturally go through values shifts at different times in life. You know, when you hit junior high, when you leave home the first time, when you get
Right.
married, when you have kids, when your kids leave,
Yeah.
right? Maybe milestones like 50 years old. So we naturally have these, men usually have it 42 to 44, like a midlife crisis. Women, it's a
Right.
little
Yeah. They're natural things.
46. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have these value shifts, which is basically we really take a look at asking ourselves the question that elicits values, which is, hey, what's most important to me in the context like my life?
Right.
So we naturally, so this whole COVID-19 and then the latest stuff that's going on,
Yeah. All the
it's really an
world's
opportunity
burning down.
for us to question, hey, what's really most important to me? And these values shift, and as a result of that, behavior shift as well,
Yeah.
right? As we do that. So it's an interesting time because that happens on all levels: the world level, state level, county level, national level, personal level, family level. Families have
Yeah.
value systems, right? Workplaces have corporate culture. That's just their value system, right?
Right.
That's driving the business.
Yeah.
So this is just a great opportunity for a restructuring of values and asking ourselves, hey, what's really most important to me now?
Yeah. I guess you really find out who really looks at this as a growth opportunity and who really looks at it as this tragedy that, really pushed their life off the track. Because I always say, like, life doesn't happen in a straight line, whether it's emotionally, financially, whatever. There's things that knock you off the path on the way to wherever you're going, right? You don't like go, I'm going to go over there financially, going to be successful. I know you may get there. You may not. You're not going there from here. It's just not going to happen, right? You're going to walk. Somebody's going to punch you in the face. You're going to run over by a truck. You're going to fall off a cliff. All these things. But what's going on now, though, is a spike in the trajectory, because there's ups and downs, but then there's in human history, there's things that have happened, whether it's the plague in 1918, which is the last time we had one of these things, to the riots in the 60s. I mean, major shifts. And I maybe I'm wrong. I think we're in a major shift because we got both of these things going on. We have this health issue, and we have a lot of riots going on, burning our cities down because things
Yeah.
have boiled over.
Yeah, COVID's kind of the gasoline, and the other incidents kind of like the spark that put it on
Yeah.
fire, and we'll see what happens when it all calms down.
Yeah, exactly. So have you seen that with, I assume you're still coaching and working with your clients, right? Because most of it's probably remote anyway. You work with Mike. He's up in here. He's up in New Jersey. So that probably hasn't changed for you too much, right? But have you seen your clients changing their emotional state or,
Oh my gosh, yeah,
yeah,
and I see everything from like I have a Japanese immigrant who's trying to keep his restaurant open out
yeah,
in California, and he gets looted, right?
right.
To I have some I don't know, forgive me, African American Black business owners, and seeing that side of it, and looking at the difficulties they're facing there, right?
Yep.
And bringing more awareness and equality, and working with that. And then I have um, you know uh, pardon the stereotypes, like the white business owners, and their whole business has just disappeared. It's gone,
Yeah.
and how
Right.
are they supposed to provide for their families? And so I see so many different perspectives on the challenges through the eyes of my clients. um, I know you didn't ask or segue into this, but really, I said a long time ago, close your eyes and get centered on you,
Yeah.
right? So that then you can be the best that you can be for your family. So then you can be the best, kind of concentric circles, right? For you and your family. And then,
Right.
your business clients and your people that you come in contact with there. And then you can be the best within the context of your community, and keep like growing outward. And so in times of a lot of uncertainty, if you really want certainty, take that quiet time, get centered with you, figure out what your truth is, figure out what's right for you, you know, be in a good emotional space, right? I don't condone anything that's an action from a negative space like anger and regret
Right.
and guilt and shame
It's
or
they're really wasted emotions, unfortunately.
yeah. And well,
They're
and it's like,
destructive to a lot of extent.
I'll throw Tony Robbins out there. Tony
Yeah.
Robbins ism out there, right? Which is if you're in an angry state, you make an angry decision, which leads to an angry action. So you get an angry result.
Of course.
It's kind of like Gandhi, right? Be the change you want to see. If you can find a way to work through that to a place of, at least, I don't know, calm or peace, well, then you can have a calm and peaceful thoughts, which can lead you to some calm and focused action, which then will give you a different outcome, right?
Right.
That will really create change and move and impact other people, because that's a higher level vibration. I don't want to get fluffy, right? But that's a higher level, activity or action that will have an impact, right?
Yeah.
So,
I
so
think the challenge is though, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, which is by the way not always the same thing. I know they use them interchangeably, but just because you
correct,
own a business does not make you an entrepreneur.
exactly, yeah,
Just because you're a solopreneur doesn't make you an entrepreneur. So, but there's a lot of people in business, and I think one of the things that people don't accept when they're going to their own business, forced into their own business, choose to start a business, whatever, they're going to fail. I don't know what they're going to fail at, right? Parts of it, all of it, this business, that business. It's just something you have to accept. Like, it's not going to be like you're taking a risk, you might fail. There's been nobody who has taken risks in business that hasn't failed at something that they're trying to do, right? So, but when these kind of challenges come about, right? I think it's even more. You have to have a pretty strong constitution, which is probably why people need you even more so than before, um, to deal with these things. Like I think at some point, like friends I know who own restaurants and stuff, it's like uncle. I mean, how much of this can I take? And then your friend out in California, your client gets looted, and
yeah,
they're like, it's like, give me a break.
yeah,
Hard enough trying to get open after you couldn't. Most of your clients couldn't take 2 months off of work. Just close your business for 2 months, take a vacation. Nobody,
yeah.
very few
Yeah,
people
no, it
could do
doesn't
that.
work that way. Yeah,
No, it doesn't work that way. So, and then they come back and their store's been looted, which has nothing to do with this COVID thing. I mean, maybe it's kind of related because we're all got pent up anger and action, all this kind of stuff, but it's not directly related. And you kind of, I'm sure a lot of people just throw their hands up and say, I can't do this anymore. And that's unfortunate.
yeah. Well, but if I could just address that real quick, you know
Yeah.
what? There's an opportunity in everything, and one of the things that I love about NLP, right,
Right.
is that one of the core fundamental aspects of it is that the person with the most flexibility controls the system.
In thinking,
Yeah,
flexibility in thought.
in everything, thinking,
Okay.
action, right, emotional resilience, whatever you want to call it, emotional
Right.
release. So let's just say I'm working with someone who has that phobia of a chair again, right?
Okay. Yeah.
if if as long as I have clarity of my outcome and it's congruent, right, which is this person says they want to release this fear or this phobia,
Okay.
and that's my outcome, right? So the outcome is non-negotiable, right? The outcome is still, hey, I'm going to feed the world like my client, right? I'm going to feed people, I'm going to feed the world. I'm going to use my love of food and all of this in my restaurant, the tools that I have to feed the world, right? So if he stays congruent with his outcome, right, in some ways the 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 problem is bigger. The problem is still there, but the solution is still the same, which is you got to try something, like you said, right? You're always going to fail, so you got to try something, evaluate it, see if it works. Yes, no, try it, see if it works. Yes, no, try it, see if it works. Yes, no. if I try this tool to help them clear the phobia, fear and phobia, it might work, it might not. If it doesn't, then I got to try this tool. If that doesn't work, then I got to try this tool and try
Right.
this tool. And I have to keep my flexibility in terms of keeping the outcome in mind, but working these tools
Yeah.
to create that change, right? And the key to that is this, though. This is what they don't tell you, which is you need to always, and I say need because in order for that system to work, you have to stay away from negative emotions.
Consciously. Right.
Yeah, and unconsciously, right? So
Yes.
when you start to get frustrated, you got to let go of your
Take a
frustration,
deep breath.
because only it's like going to the optometrist. If you keep seeing the world through these lenses of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, pride,
That's all you'll see.
desire,
Right.
these lenses that keep things fuzzy, you're never going to see the clear next step. So you got to keep trying and playing, and clear or not so clear, release it, yes, yes. But if you just keep flipping the little lenses, clear or not so clear, clear or not so clear, clear or not so clear, eventually you'll hit that right combination, the
Right.
emotion, the picture, whatever releases, and then your future becomes clear. The next action becomes clear. My guy in California, he said, look, you know what, if I'm going out, I got 2 days until I got to call it quits.
Right.
So like if I'm going out, I'm going to go out. And so feeding people. So he donated 500 lunches
Wow.
to a hospital.
Yeah.
They loved it so much, he came back the next day. That day he was going to close his business the next day. That day a nonprofit that opened up as a response to COVID called him and said, we want to buy lunches for the entire next month, 500 lunches a day for this hospital. We just got a huge grant, from a donor, whatever, and we want you to do that because you got such great reviews.
And now, if that's not the secret, I don't know what is.
Yeah, but if he would have just been mad and angry and
Right. That's
feeling
what I mean.
and a victim and
Right.
everything else, right? He had to let all that stuff go. Not to promote, he used a bunch of my clearing tools, like all that anger, sadness, all that stuff. And then he got it. And that's when the idea came to him, when his mind was clear. It
Right.
was a spontaneous gut impulse. He took advantage of it. And so even in these, whether the problem is a response to COVID, whether the problem is a response to, I got a problem because my sales are down this month and I don't know how I'm going to cover payroll, to, oh my gosh, I got a back order on lettuce or sprouts because there's salmonella. The solution is still the same. When they say the solution is
The
within you,
goal, the
it
objective,
truly
whatever.
is.
Right. Yeah.
But the solution's within you, but you can only see it if you let go of all the negative stuff you got going on, the head
Right.
track, monkey mind, the feelings, the emotions. Yeah, the only tools that I know that create long-term change after 20 years of this are working with the unconscious mind to let these negative emotions and thoughts go.
Yeah. So
That's
I
it.
guess all those rules about the laws of attraction and the laws of reflection, it's true. It's what you put out there. If you put out negative emotions and negative feelings, you're going to see the world that way. And that's what's coming back to you. And if you
Yep.
just say, you know what, I'm going to make the best of this, I'm going to help as many people as I can. And magically, the charity gets the money. They see what you're doing. They reach out to you because you did this and that. And I wouldn't say there's no secret to it. I think it's just a question of, it's, I mean, I always say, mind over matter. We hear that when we're little,
Yeah.
but it's so ironically true in life and in business, because we'll talk a little, this is an entrepreneur's podcast. We'll talk a little bit about business, but I could talk about this stuff forever because I've always been fascinated about how your attitude and how you view things can get you through so much, when it comes to the things that we have to endure as human beings in life. That it's just, it's weird how these little things you learn in life are just, they just become true. And it's just,
Yeah.
it's just your attitude is really what makes your life. So I guess you're a lot about shifting people's attitudes and their perceptions and how they react to situations, how they deal with situations.
Yeah, my little micro tag is right. Changing thoughts, emotions, and lives every day. But
Yeah, that's a good
notice,
one.
if you get that, just notice the question then is, how do you do that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So
Of course.
the law of attraction was a brilliant marketing model,
Right.
but nobody ever said, okay, but how do you do
Right.
it?
It doesn't do it on and of itself.
Right. And that's where I'm going to be a broken record here, but that's where the skills and the tools of NLP and like timeline therapy and EMDR and all these emotional release tools, there are ways to release the negative emotions. We use the top 6 or top 7, right? Anger, sadness, fear, guilt, limiting decisions. Got to do forgiveness because that releases resentments, and then dichotomy work, which is what they call parts integrations, right?
Okay.
And so that's what bridges the gap between this is where I am and this is where I want to be, right? So having like that inspiration, people just want that to happen magically. Oh yeah, just let me get that great brilliant business
Yeah,
idea,
it
like
doesn't
donating
happen that
these
way.
lunches, it's going to
Right.
create all this stuff. But the real process of that was, my client was stuck. He was in these negative spaces. We talked about this before. He had the awareness to understand that's where he was.
Right.
He had a tool. It didn't have to be my tool, but he had some tools to actually release those things, so that then he was open to the possibility of asking the better question, and which is, hey, what's something I can do? Then the inspiration came to him. And then he had to not talk himself out of it, and just trust, to have safety and trust that that would produce something for him, because it was like a
Right.
piece
He
of,
didn't know what that would be.
yeah. And
Yeah.
then move forward with it anyway. So that's actually the whole process. But the self-help guys just don't market it that way.
Right. Well, I understand that. You can't just sit home and say, I believe, I believe, I believe this will get better. It will come to me. I will
Yeah,
win the lottery, and you don't even buy a ticket, you know?
yeah, you can sit at home and wish for a relationship, but the only guy who's coming is the pizza guy, right?
Yeah,
And
right,
even then, you
exactly.
still had to dial the phone number.
Yeah. What's that thing where they say that if you're out on a lake in an aluminum boat in a lightning storm, you can pray to God, but you better row towards shore at the same time very fast?
Exactly.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
he gave you, the God says, well, why didn't you save me? Well, I did. I gave you a boat with, with oars to
yeah.
row to the shore. So let's talk, Jim, about, advice for, so do you work with more like business owners and entrepreneurs? Are you working with corporate executives? Or like, what would you say your clientele breaks down to?
Great question. I'd say honestly, I get about 50% of my business from all my past clients,
Yeah,
right?
referrals,
Past
sure.
referrals.
Right.
And that's grown kind of from, I've kind of grown organically from the I'm going back to it again, right? But they're kind of like the Tony Robbins roots. People who know they want something more, they want to create some change. Like, key tagline is, I know what I need to do, I'm just not doing it.
Right.
Right? That's like my ideal client. I know what I need to do, I'm
Yeah.
just not doing it. I'm standing in my own way, right? So I get entrepreneurs, small business owners, people who say, "Hey, if it's going to be, it's up to me." The real estate, financial planners, people who have to go in every day, and
Right.
their business and their results, they know, are a direct reflection of their thinking,
Yeah. The
right?
results economy. Right.
But I've worked with everybody from high school kids, who amputees, to small business owners, to CEOs of companies, to large companies like General Mills, and some big companies like that. I kind of work with everybody across the demographics, but but what really is an ideal client for me, and who I really attract, are people who, A, they know I have a problem.
Right.
B, they know they want to change it. C, they know it's up to them to change it, right?
Right.
And they don't make excuses, right?
Yeah.
They
Because
want to do,
without those four, it's going to be real painful for you, let
yeah,
alone them. Yeah. So this podcast is really about um, a reflection of my frustration, if you'll call it, with people that are well intended, who get started in a business or with a product or with a service or whatever it is, and don't really take the time to, plan, to be strategic about things, to think things through. They jump into whatever excites them, the making of the product, the setting up of the store, the building of the website, whatever. And they don't do the work ahead of time to determine if anybody's even going to buy what they're making, or does it make any financial sense to make the thing? Can you make any money? Every good idea shouldn't be a business, right? So I was wondering, like, for those kinds of people, what kind of advice you have, without getting too into the weeds, for people to reflect a little bit and say, okay, well, maybe I should, you know, be a little bit more careful with what I'm doing. Is that a
well,
loaded question?
I, I love the question, and I'm going to say this, which is, It's not about maybe jumping in and not thinking about things. It's about, because emotion moves the world, right?
Right. And you're not going to get it right. You're going
You
to
know,
always act on emotion, right?
if I would have actually had to stop and plan and map everything out that was going to happen, when I resigned from the Marshal Service and moved to California and started working for Tony Robbins, I probably wouldn't have done it,
Yeah, right.
right? So we talk ourselves out of success a lot. So we rationalize ourselves out of success a lot, I think, because that bad question of, well, how am I going to do that, right?
Right.
The key is, if you take some massive action and it's impulsive, but it's something that you really feel compelled to do, and that the key is, I guess, what's the strategy that you have is the emotion wanes off, and then the negative self-talk kicks in, then the negative emotions kick in. It's like, how fast can you get back to that energy and
Away from
that,
the self-doubt.
yeah, the good stuff that got you to take the action in the first place. So I kind of, maybe I'm answering the question as an opposite, which I don't think it's bad that they jump in. I think they maybe just don't have better strategies for what happens when they start to achieve all or hit all the obstacles, right?
You're absolutely right.
And
They're
and
not
that's,
ready for the challenges they're going to face. That's the problem.
yeah, because the bottom line is, see, I've been doing this for what, 20 years, I said, right? The bottom line is, I questioned myself for the first 14 or 15
I
before I
still question
really
myself. Yeah.
committed to just be like all in. Okay, I'm gonna do this thing. I'm gonna fail. My wife engaged in the business, and we just said, okay, we just got to have faith and trust, and we are just all in the immersion. That's when my business really exploded and took off, right? So I'm segueing a little bit, but there's a reason why they say, hey, I became an overnight sensation after 20 years of hard work.
Right. Exactly.
There's always
True.
two sides to everything. You can say, oh, James, oh, you grew your business practice. You have a
Right.
six-figure coaching practice. You're like so
Overnight.
awesome. You followed your dream. You went across country. You quit these jobs. Oh my gosh, you're such an inspiration. You ran 100 miles. You did all this stuff, 100-mile race. And I'm going, okay, but all that's really great. You think I'm like totally motivated and like the most like driven, passionate guy. I've always known what I wanted to do. And the bottom line is, the
It's
majority of
not
the time,
true.
I had no clue what the heck I was doing.
Right.
I was stumbling all over myself. I'm questioning every single day, is this what I want to do? The only thing that kept me going was what I loved about the job, which was my clients, right? And
Right.
helping them, which helped me help myself,
Right.
you
Yeah, well,
know?
it's true, right? You teach and you give therapy and you
Yeah.
coach people, and it does help you while it helps them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and on my worst heck day, I won't say the bad word, right? But on my worst heck day, the one thing I say to motivate myself is, my business name is Evolution for Success. I'm gonna throw my primary motivator out there. I just have to put, no matter what I'm facing, I just have to put MY in front of that, and
Okay.
remember that my
Yeah.
business is actually my evolution for success, and I just got to keep growing. So, my catch all to people is, hey, it's kind of like a great investor, right? An investor doesn't say, how much money can I make in this? They say, the first question they say is, how can I make sure I don't lose my money?
Right.
Right. So it's kind of like when I wake up every day, the first thing I say is are the are the problems that I'm facing in my life today going to make me a better person? And if the answer to that question is yes, that the problems and the things I'm going to have to work through are going to make me a better person, and at the end of the day, I'll do good with that, I know I'm on my purpose.
See,
If
that's
they're,
why what I'm doing here when I interview people, why I like doing what I'm doing, because I find people fascinating, and their stories are always more fascinating than they think it was when they were going through it. Like the way they work things out and get through, and then you look at it in hindsight, like you said, if you looked at your life in hindsight, how it was going to work out, you would never have done it,
yeah,
because you'd be like, what are the chances of you ending up where you are now again? They're probably very slim. So I interview these people. There's one gentleman who I actually have to call after our meeting. Jack. If you listen to my first two episodes, it was a 2-part episode. His whole life story, going back to the 40s and 50s, and he actually went to my high school, which I didn't know, and he ran all these businesses, helped launch Rolling Stone magazine, all these crazy stories. But he's telling them like, oh yeah, then I went to this, that, and I'm interrupting him like, Jack, are you kidding me? Like you were in the middle of whatever, and you had 4 quarters in your pocket, and you didn't know what you're gonna do. What did you do? I don't know. I picked up the phone and I called this guy, and I told my wife I'd be late for dinner or whatever. But to other people hearing the story, they're like, wow, I would never
yeah,
do that. But I think that's one of the things in life. Like you don't want to know how hard it's going to be, or you would never do it. Like civilization would fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna put it in a great metaphor, which is from my life, right? But when I told you had like the 5-year college plan, right? So I got to my senior year, I was on probation, and I got off probation, and
Well, you
so I
got a
had to
whole
take.
1 year of education, so you got
Yeah, I got to
20%,
pay for it
25% more
twice.
education than other
Iowa
people.
Iowa State was so nice; they let me pay for my
Right.
senior year twice, but I was like 240 pounds. I was like way overweight,
You don't look,
right?
because funny, you're like tall and thin. It's funny to.
Well, yeah. So I thank you. And finally one day I was so full of anger, rage, all this other stuff. I'll just fast forward. But I went out and I walked / jogged around this track 2 miles. I walked a mile. I ran walk / jog 1 more mile. I said, okay, I can run 3 miles. Forget this, right? And I just started every single day. And that was way back I graduated college in 91, right?
Okay.
So that was what, 30 years ago. If you would have told me at that time, with who I was in my intellectual, my mental, emotional faculties, right, my state of mind at the time, if you would have told me that fast forward 30 years, right, or 20 years to 2010, that in 1 calendar year I'd run a 50-mile race, which is an ultra marathon, right? So I ran a 50-mile race.
Nice.
I ran 3 marathons that year, including the Goofy Challenge, which is the half marathon on Saturday, the full marathon on Sunday with a client. I
Wow.
ran,
This is all in the same year?
yeah, I ran a 40-mile race. I ran a 100-kilometer race, which is 62 miles. And the 50-mile race, I ran 1 calendar year later. I ran the 100-mile race,
Wow. How do you
right? That
run
a
100
person would be
miles?
able to do that.
Yeah.
I would have told you a single individual, that's an inhuman task. Nobody can do
Impossible.
that.
Yeah.
And if somebody would have said, look, but you're going to do it, I would have said, oh my God, there's no way
I
somebody
just
like
give up now. Right.
would ever do that, and that was in 2010 and 11. And then now I'm doing this virtual race, like Run Across Tennessee. And I just started this virtual race May 1st to run from my sister's house in Seattle all the way here to the East Coast. It's like 3,556 miles
So what is a
to,
virtual race? It means you don't run next to each other. You run at different times.
it just means I have my map, right? Like you
Right.
can see my map behind me here. I have my
Oh, you
map.
do the running locally, but
And
you add it
yeah,
up.
it's like the honor system, and I tally it up and I follow it on the
Got it.
map, right? So I track my progress in a book, and
How many miles is that from Seattle to you?
3,556 miles.
That's
So,
easy. Come
so
on.
yeah, it's
What
only
are you
it's only
complaining
3
about?
miles. It's only 3.1 miles a day for
Yeah, I mean,
3
it's not a
years,
lot. Okay, for 3 years.
1,095 days. Yeah.
Right. I love
So,
it though.
but my only point is, somebody could look at that now and be like, oh my, whatever their response could be. But you know, if you really boil it down to a couple simple things, you stay hydrated, you eat, and you just put one foot in front of the other.
There's nothing more than that.
And success is just that. You find a way to let go of all the negative stuff that's in your way of moving forward, and you just stay focused. You focus on where you want to be, but then you let go of, like Wayne Dyer says, you mind the gap. You let go of
He's great too. Yeah.
everything back to just right now, and what's one thing I can do today? What's one step that I can take? And people, they say, no, I just want to win the lottery. I don't want to put the work in, right?
Right.
But success really happens from people that can just do that consistently.
Right.
Whatever that is for you. You don't have to be a
Yeah.
Tony Robbins and
No,
sleep
you
for
build your own
hours a
foundation,
day.
right?
No, it's just what's something you never let go of your goal, but you stay flexible, and just what's one thing I can do today, even if it's like totally off the wall, totally doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, let me just talk to my neighbor. Oh, hey, what do you know about this? Or hey, oh, or that one thing on Google where you roam
Right.
and lead to this, which leads to this, which leads to this one product where you find that solution for a problem. Or
There you are.
success happens one foot in front of the other,
Yeah. And that's the best advice you can give to people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that I better stop it now because we've gotten so deep. We just reached the pinnacle of advice where
But look
people are
how
going to change
simple
their
it
life.
is,
Well,
right?
yeah, that's my point. You boiled it down to, so I appreciate it because I know I'm looking at the clock. I've taken up a lot of your time, probably more than an hour we've been talking. I
I
could go
so
on for,
appreciate it.
yeah, I can go on for even longer, but now I know why Mike thinks so highly of you. So let's definitely stay in touch. Let me, here,